So in the previous section, we learned how to use JavaScript to create new DOM elements for the facts data. And so let's now learn how to do the exact same thing using React. So in this video, we will render this list of facts here. Now to do so, we will again use the fake data that we also used first in the previous section. So let's actually get those here from data.js. And we need categories as well a bit later. So let's grab all of this here. Okay, and we will then a bit later learn how we can also load that, so this data from Supabase again. All right, for now let's just paste this data right here into app.js, but not inside any component. So let's leave this data here outside of any component. Okay, and now let's go to the component that has this list. So that's the factlist component. Okay, and here let's create a variable called fact, and let's set it here to initial facts. And this is just a temporary variable. So let me write that here. So this is temporary, all right? We are only doing this here while we are still using this fake data. And so here, instead of using initial facts, we basically create a new variable which holds the exact same data, but with a different name. Now, okay, so what do we want to do here inside this section? Well, we want to create an unordered list, remember? And let's just go here. And actually it doesn't have any class, but it's also not that list. So actually this is the list. So this UL with the factslist class. So let's grab this, place that here first. And we need to close the UL as well. And we need to change it to class name. Then here inside of this unordered list, we, just like we did before, want to create one list item for each fact in our array, right? So just to remember, we have this array which contains 3 objects. And for each of these objects, we now want to create one big DOM element. So one list item here in the user interface. So what we did before was to loop over this array with the map method, and then we created a string for the HTML for each of the facts. And here we will actually do something similar. So this is how you render lists in React. So we are going to write some JavaScript in here. And so remember, we do that using curly braces. So just like we did here to reference the app title variable, right? So you want to write some JavaScript. So let's give ourselves some space here. And now what we want to do is to also loop over the facts array. So we do facts.map, and we call each of the elements, so each of the objects, a fact. And what we want to return here is now simply some more JSX. So we can simply write li, and then let's just, for now, say fact. So just so we see what happens. So let's give it a save. And immediately we get 3 elements here. So one for each fact. Now they don't have any data from the fact object yet, but it means that we did, so we created here some li element. So we actually no longer need this. So I just want to show it to you. So we created 3 li's. Okay. So in React, when we want to render multiple elements at once, just like these facts here, for example, we simply loop over the array, and then on each iteration, we return some more JSX. So again, this is not HTML, it is JSX, right? And so again, this is similar to what we did previously. But before we had to actually write a string, and then we also had to manually insert that HTML into the DOM. So remember how we did that here in script.js. So we mapped over the array, and then we returned this string, right? Then we even had to join all the array elements into one big string, and then we inserted that string as HTML into the facts list. Right? So we had to select all of these elements right here. So we had to select the facts list itself, while here we don't do any of that. So again, it's a completely different philosophy because we are building the interface in JavaScript and not the other way around. But anyway, let's now actually get the LI that we want, maybe except for these vote buttons. Or actually, why not? Well, we can include everything here. So just grab the LI, copy that. So of course, just one of them. And then here, let's simply replace this. Let's replace it. And the first order of business is to change class to class name. And all of them. Okay. And if we save this now, then this will not really work exactly because we have some problems here. And one of those problems is this style. So in React, inline styles work a little bit different than what we have here. So instead of specifying a string and then adding the CSS declaration, we need to write some JavaScript. So to write JavaScript, remember, we open curly braces, and then we need to provide an object with the style. So this means we need another curly braces. So this looks a little bit weird, but this is just how it works. And now to finish, we need to change the name of this property here, because this is now an object, and so this means that background color is a property. But in JavaScript, property names are not allowed to have dashes like this. So what we do instead is write it like this. And then here is where we actually have a string. So put some quotes there in the beginning at the end, give it a save, and now it works. So again, just make sure that you specify the style like this. So specifying JavaScript and then giving it an object where background color is the property and the value is the string with the color. All right, but of course now here we still have static data basically. So we have the same values everywhere. And of course, that's because we are using the static data. We are not using the data that's coming from the object. So let's quickly do that. So here we want to replace the text first. So we want to get some data from this fact. And so we need JavaScript again. So again, we enter JavaScript here basically. And now fact.text. And so that changed already the text here. But let's keep moving on. So here we no longer need this. And then here, whenever we need to enter JavaScript, we need no quotes. So we just write this. Otherwise, if we had the quotes, then this would simply be interpreted as being a string. But it should be JavaScript mode. So fact.source. And then here, let's replace those numbers. So that's facts.votes interesting. And then let's just copy. As I am a bit lazy, I like to just copy paste stuff. So here we have votes for mind-blowing and then votes false. Okay, well, somehow that doesn't work. Maybe our object doesn't have that kind of data, but actually it does. So let's see what we have here. And usually when we have some errors, we can just come here and see what's going on. And now these are many times very cryptic. So let's just reload. But now the only error that we get is this one with the key prop. But I'm going to talk about that in a second. Now I just see that the mistake that we did here was to write facts instead of fact. So that's why React couldn't find the data. So if we reload now, then we have these distinctive numbers there. And now just to finish, we also need to take care of the category and of the corresponding color. So here it's not technology, but it is, of course, fact.category. Right, so that looks better. But now we also need to get the correct color. So we already solved that problem in the previous lecture, or actually in the previous section, with this thing that we did right here. So we wrote this entire code here, and so now we need exactly the same. Remember, so I'm not going to explain again, so I will simply say that what we do here is that we take the color of the categories array. So let's copy paste that and place that here instead of this string. Okay, now here we get some problem. Let's just undo it. That's sometimes easier. Let's go back here. And yeah, so we don't want to include all of this because this basically enters JavaScript mode in this template literal. But here we are already in JavaScript mode in React. So let's just grab this piece of JavaScript here, copy that, and just replace this hard-coded color with this dynamically calculated color. Give it a save, and now indeed it works just like before, which makes sense because we are using the exact same code which used to work before. Now here we get this warning about a key prop, and so what this means is basically that we need to give each of the elements inside of a list, so each of the elements inside of a map, a unique name. So some kind of unique identification. And usually that's what an ID is for. And I think we actually have an ID here. Yeah, so each of them has an ID property, which is unique. And so we need to specify that right here in li. So just write key equal, and then again we need to enter JavaScript mode, and then we get fact.id. And this key is just for some optimization inside of React. So this will not be visible anywhere, but it will make this error disappear, or at least it should once we reload. Okay, and with this, we actually rendered our list of facts. And then a bit later, when we actually load again the data from Supabase, we simply replace this line of code here, and then everything here will work just the same. Now, if you remember from the previous lecture where I showed you that diagram where we divided the user interface into different components, I mentioned that we were going to create one component for each of these facts, right? But right now we didn't do that yet. So we have a fact list, but it is just one big component with all of this code in there, right? And so let's change that in the next lecture.